This is The Curse of Oak Island. Season 13, Episode 21. The episode is called A Sacred Symbol, and what the team pulls out of the money pit today may change everything. Something was found deep underground on Oak Island. Something carved. Something old. Something that nobody expected to see at that depth, in that place, at this point in the search. And the moment the team got a closer look, the conversation changed completely. What was it? Where exactly did it come from? And why are some of the world's most respected researchers now pointing to one of history's most powerful and mysterious organizations as the people who may have put it there? Stay with this, because this one is different. Oak Island sits off the coast of Nova Scotia, Canada. It is a small island, quiet, covered in trees. From the water, it looks like nothing special. But for more than 200 years, people have believed that something extraordinary is buried beneath it. It started around 1795. A teenager named Daniel McGinnis noticed a strange circular depression in the ground on the island. He and his friends started digging. What they found beneath the surface stopped them cold. Layers of logs, carefully placed, one after another, every 10 feet or so. It was not natural. Someone had done this on purpose. Someone had dug a very deep pit and filled it with something, and then sealed it shut. That pit became known as the Money Pit. Since then, hundreds of people have tried to reach the bottom. They have used shovels, machines, tunnels, and some of the most advanced drilling equipment available. 6 people have died in the search. Fortunes have been spent. Companies have been formed and broken apart over it. And still, the full secret of Oak Island has never been revealed. That is the mystery that Rick and Marty Lagina have been chasing for over a decade on The Curse of Oak Island. 2 brothers from Michigan who first read about the island as children and never let go of the dream of solving it. And after all these seasons, all these digs, they are still going. Still finding things, still pushing deeper. Because Oak Island keeps giving up pieces of the puzzle, just never all of them. Not yet. Before we go any further, there is something you need to understand about one of the most important theories connected to Oak Island. It involves a group of men who for nearly 200 years were among the most powerful people in the world. The Knights Templar. If you have heard the name but are not sure of the details, here is the short version. The Knights Templar were founded in the early 1100s. They started as a small group of soldiers whose job was to protect Christian pilgrims traveling to Jerusalem. But they grew fast. They became wealthy. They became powerful. And they became keepers of secrets. The Templars controlled enormous amounts of treasure. Land, gold, religious artifacts, and possibly things far more significant than gold. They built churches and fortresses across Europe and the Middle East, and many of those structures contain symbols and carvings that still puzzle historians today. Then, in 1307, everything changed. The King of France, deeply in debt to the Templars, had their leaders arrested. Many were tortured. Many were killed. And officially, the order was destroyed. But here is the thing. Their treasure was never found. Not by the king, not by the church, not by anyone. So where did it go? Some researchers believe the Templars sent their treasure and their most sacred items away before the arrests could happen. They believe it was hidden, moved, protected. And some of those researchers believe the trail leads west, across the Atlantic Ocean, all the way to a small island off the coast of Nova Scotia. That theory has existed for years, but there was never hard physical proof to support it. Nothing found on Oak Island that could point directly to the Templars. Until now. Season 13 of The Curse of Oak Island has been one of the most active and focused seasons the team has ever had. From the very beginning, the digs have gone deeper, the finds have come faster, and the theories have sharpened into something that feels less like guessing and more like closing in. Earlier in the season, the team recovered artifacts and materials that suggested the island had seen human activity far older than most people had assumed. Stonework, unusual metal fragments, evidence of carefully constructed underground passages. Each find added weight to the idea that whoever built the original money pit was not doing it randomly. This was planned. This was deliberate. This was the work of people who knew exactly what they were doing and why. The Templar theory gained momentum as the season moved forward. References to Templar-connected symbols and building methods kept appearing in the team's research. Historians brought in to examine the evidence began pointing in the same direction. And with each new episode, the question grew louder. Was there a Templar presence on Oak Island? By the time episode 21 arrived, that question was no longer just a background theory. It had moved to the center of everything. The team was focused, the dig was active, and something was about to come up from deep inside the money pit that would make that question impossible to ignore. The morning of the dig in episode 21 looks like so many mornings before it on Oak Island. The equipment is running. The caisson is deep in the ground at the money pit site. The air is cool and heavy, the way Nova Scotia air always feels when there is moisture coming off the water. Rick and Marty are on site, along with several members of the Fellowship and a few of the technical team members who manage the drilling and extraction operations. There is a focus in the air that goes beyond the normal concentration of a dig day. Everyone on the team knows the depth they are working at. They know what layers of soil and debris they are passing through. And they know what the historical record suggests could be present at those depths. The machinery does its work slowly and carefully. Material is brought up from below in sections, examined, set aside. The team looks at everything. Nothing is dismissed without a proper look. That discipline has served them well before. Small objects, overlooked by earlier treasure hunters, have turned out to be some of the most meaningful finds of the entire search. Today, that same discipline is about to pay off in a way none of them quite expected. It happens the way most significant finds on Oak Island happen. Not with a dramatic explosion of excitement. Not with shouting. It starts quietly. One person sees something in the material that has just come up from below. They stop. They look more carefully. They pick it up, or they call someone else over. There is a pause, a stillness, the kind that experienced diggers recognize immediately. Something is different about this piece. It is not a coin. They have found coins before. It is not a tool, or a piece of wood, or a bit of old chain. Those things have a familiar shape, a familiar feel. This is something else. This is something that appears to have been made with intention, shaped with care, marked in a specific way. There is something carved into it. The team brings it closer. Eyes narrow. Someone reaches for better light. The object is handled gently now, the way you handle something when your instinct tells you it matters. The noise of the machinery fades into the background. The cold air, the sound of the water nearby, the weight of all those seasons searching, all of it seems to compress into this one quiet moment. What is this? Where exactly did it come from? And why does the shape on its surface feel so familiar to the people who have spent years studying the history of this island? The object is examined carefully, and the more the team looks at it, the more significant it becomes. What they have found carries a symbol, a carved marking with a distinct and recognizable shape. It is not a random scratch or a natural formation in the material. This was put there by human hands. The lines are deliberate, the form is clear, and the depth at which it was recovered places it well within the historical range the team has been targeting. The layers of the money pit that correspond to activity centuries old. The symbol itself is not enormous. It does not need to be. What gives it weight is not its size, but its design. The specific geometry of the carving, the way the lines relate to each other, the form it creates when you step back and see it whole. Researchers who study religious and historical iconography will recognize it immediately. It belongs to a visual language that has appeared across centuries and across continents. A language connected to sacred spaces, to protected knowledge, to groups of people who believed that certain things were too important to leave unguarded. The team photographs it. They measure it. They record exactly where it was found and at what depth. Every detail is documented because they know what this kind of evidence requires. You cannot bring a claim like this forward without being thorough. And then they start asking the question out loud, the question that all of them are already thinking. This shape, this specific symbol, where have researchers seen it before? Now comes the work of connecting what the team has found to the historical record. And when the researchers and historians on site begin that process, what they find is striking. The symbol recovered from the money pit shares strong visual characteristics with markings found at confirmed Templar sites in Europe. Churches built by the Templars in Portugal, France, and Scotland carry similar carved symbols. The fortresses associated with the order have produced comparable iconography. There is a consistent visual language in Templar-related sacred spaces, and this carving fits within it. This is not a vague similarity. It is specific enough that the researchers take it seriously. The shape, the proportions, the way it is rendered, these things match too closely to be dismissed as coincidence. One of the historians working with the team explains it plainly. The Templars used specific symbols to mark locations of importance, sacred sites, burial locations, places where things of great value, not just gold, but items they considered spiritually significant, were kept. These symbols were not decoration. They were messages. They were meant to be read by people who knew the language. The question now is whether what was buried beneath Oak Island was placed there by people who spoke that language. Whether the long chain of evidence gathered across 13 seasons of this search is pointing to the same answer that some researchers have been quietly suggesting for years. The similarities between what was found in the money pit and what exists at known Templar sites are too strong to ignore. Everyone on the team can see it, and that changes the nature of the conversation entirely. Rick Lagina has been digging on Oak Island for a long time. He has seen impressive finds before. He has felt the rush of a discovery, followed by the slow process of figuring out what it actually means. He knows not to get too far ahead of the evidence, but this one is different. Even Rick, who is careful and measured in how he responds to finds, cannot fully hide what this moment means to him. There is something in his face when he looks at the symbol, a recognition, a weight. Years of reading, years of research, years of standing on this island and believing the answer was here somewhere. And now this. Marty, the more practical of the two brothers, asks the hard questions. He wants to know about verification. He wants to know what the next steps are. But even he acknowledges that this find demands serious attention. This is not something you explain away easily. The other members of the Fellowship, the people who have been alongside the Laginas through seasons of searching, share a similar quiet intensity. There is no wild celebration. There rarely is on Oak Island when something real comes up. The reaction is more like a held breath, like standing at the edge of something very large and not quite being ready to look all the way down. The experts brought in to assess the find offer careful but genuinely interested responses. They use phrases like highly significant and requires further analysis, which in the world of historical research is about as excited as professionals tend to get in the field. But it would not be an honest account if everything about this discovery went smoothly. It never does on Oak Island, And this episode is no exception. The location of the find creates some immediate challenges. Getting the object out of the money pit area without damaging it requires careful work. The depth from which it came means that the surrounding material needs to be handled with precision. One wrong move and context is lost. And in archaeology, context is everything. Where something was found, what was around it, what layer of earth it came from, all of that is part of the evidence. There is also a question of how quickly conclusions can reasonably be drawn. Some members of the team want to move fast. The find feels significant, and the instinct is to push forward immediately, to start connecting it to everything else they have gathered. Others urge patience. The object needs to be properly analyzed. Assumptions made too quickly can undermine everything. That tension between the urgency of the search and the discipline required to do it right is present throughout the episode. It is a familiar tension on Oak Island, and it is honest. Real investigation does not always move at the speed people want. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is slow down. Not everyone, of course, is ready to accept that this symbol points to the Knights Templar. There are researchers and historians who approach the Oak Island story with significant skepticism. They have heard Templar theories before. They have seen connections drawn between the island and half a dozen famous mysteries of history, and they have watched many of those connections fall apart under proper scrutiny. For the skeptics, the key questions are straightforward. How do you know this object is genuinely old and not a more recent introduction to the site? How do you establish that a visual similarity between two carvings proves a direct historical link rather than a coincidence of form? And even if the symbol is authentic and old, does it necessarily point to the Templars specifically, or could it have other origins? These are fair questions. They deserve fair answers. And the honest response is that at the point of this episode, not all of those answers are available yet. The object needs laboratory analysis. Dating needs to be established. The full context of where it was found needs to be mapped against everything else recovered from that area of the money pit. The skeptics are not wrong to ask these things, and the show is not wrong to include their voices, because the truth of what is buried on Oak Island, if there is a truth to find, can only be reached through honest investigation. Not through wishful thinking, not through confirmation bias, but through evidence, properly gathered and properly tested. That is what makes the next steps so important. Zoom out for a moment. Step back from the dig, from the cold air and the machinery, and the careful hands holding a carved object. Step back far enough to see the bigger picture. The idea that the Knights Templar crossed the Atlantic Ocean before Columbus is not new. It has been explored by historians, researchers, and independent investigators for decades. There is a body of evidence, some of it compelling, some of it disputed, that suggests European contact with North America happened earlier than the textbooks traditionally taught. The Sinclair family of Scotland, who had deep historical ties to the Templar Order, are one of the groups most often connected to early transatlantic exploration. Henry Sinclair is believed by some researchers to have made a voyage to North America in the late 1300s. Nearly a century before Columbus. The Mi'kmaq people of Nova Scotia have oral traditions that some historians believe describe the arrival of Europeans during that period. Then there are stone structures and carvings found across New England and Atlantic Canada that carry markings similar to those found at European Templar sites. Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland, built by the Sinclair family, and filled with extraordinary stonework, contains carvings that some researchers believe depict plants native to North America. Plants that would not have been known to a European sculptor unless someone had already been there. Oak Island sits in the middle of all of this, geographically, historically, and now, with this latest find from the money pit, perhaps symbolically as well. The search for what is buried there may not just be a treasure hunt. It may be a search for proof that history happened differently than we were taught. This find changes things. That is the feeling that runs through the team as episode 21 moves forward. Not in a chaotic way, not in a way that throws out everything they have been doing, but in a way that sharpens the focus and strengthens certain threads of the investigation that have been present for a long time. Areas of the island that connect to the Templar theory now carry new significance. Old maps and historical documents that the team has studied before are brought back out. New questions are asked of evidence that was already in hand. The symbol found in the money pit is not a dead end. It is a direction. It tells the team and the researchers working with them that they are looking in the right place, that the layers of history buried beneath this island include, or at least strongly suggest, a connection to one of the most powerful and secretive organizations that ever existed. The next steps are clear. Get the object properly analyzed, establish its age, match it against the full catalog of known Templar symbols, and then go back to the island and keep digging. Well, because if the symbol is real, if its age holds up and the connection is confirmed, then the question of what else is down there becomes more urgent than ever. The team is moving, the search is accelerating, and the season still has more to give. If the symbol is what the researchers believe it is, then what the team might find next is almost too significant to say out loud. The Templars were not ordinary treasure hunters. What they protected went far beyond gold. Throughout history, various accounts describe the Templars as the guardians of objects and documents of extraordinary religious and historical importance. Things that certain people in power very much wanted to control or destroy. If the money pit was built by people connected to that order, or by the order itself, then the purpose of that pit was not simply to hide wealth. It was to protect something that could not be allowed to fall into the wrong hands. Something worth crossing an ocean for. Something worth the extraordinary engineering of a structure that has confounded investigators for over 2 centuries. What could that be? The researchers connected to the Oak Island investigation have offered several possibilities over the years. Sacred documents, religious artifacts, items removed from Jerusalem before the destruction of the temple, objects too significant and too dangerous to leave in Europe when the Templar order was being dismantled by those who feared what the Templars knew. These are large claims. They require large evidence. But the people making them are not doing so casually. They are following a chain of clues that now include something recovered from deep inside the money pit. Something carved with a symbol that speaks a very old language. And that language seems to be saying, keep going. The answer is here. As episode 21 comes to a close, the team is not done. This is not a moment of completion. It is a moment of escalation. The symbol has been documented and secured. Plans are made for its analysis. The team identifies the next priority areas for the dig based on what this find suggests about the deeper structure of the money pit. There is new energy on the island, the kind that comes not from reckless excitement, but from the feeling that the work is finally converging on something real. Season 13 still has episodes ahead, and the trajectory of those episodes now runs through this moment. Every dig that follows will be colored by what was found here. Every new piece of evidence will be measured against it. And the symbol from the money pit does not answer the central question of Oak Island. Not yet. The island never gives up its secrets all at once. It gives them in pieces, slowly, across years and seasons of patient work. But each piece matters. Each piece brings the picture a little more into focus. The Templar theory is no longer just a theory floating at the edges of the investigation. It is now supported by something physical, something recovered from the earth, something that can be tested, analyzed, and either confirmed or set aside by the evidence. And that is how real answers get found. Not by hoping, not by guessing, but by digging deep enough and being willing to follow where the evidence leads. So here is where things stand after Season 13, Episode 21 of The Curse of Oak Island. A symbol was found in the money pit, a carved marking pulled from deep underground, a marking that carries strong visual connections to the imagery of the Knights Templar, one of history's most powerful and mysterious organizations. The team has documented it, experts have examined it, and the people who have spent years researching the possible Templar connection to Oak Island are treating it as the most significant piece of evidence the island has produced in support of that theory. Does it prove everything? No, not yet. Proof requires more work, more analysis, more digging. And Oak Island, as always, will not make it easy. But the direction is clear. The symbol points somewhere. The history behind it runs deep. And the team that has been chasing this mystery across 13 seasons of television is more focused now than they have ever been. The money pit is old. The island keeps its secrets well. But the evidence is growing, and the people doing this work are not stopping. One question remains, and it is a question worth sitting with. After everything found in Season 13, Episode 21 of The Curse of Oak Island, after the symbol, the history, the Templar connections, and everything the team has uncovered, do you believe the Knights Templar were here?